Hello and welcome to this SlimDevOps Live episode 49 now. If you're watching this after the fact on YouTube, this was originally streamed on the 24th of June on twitch.tv/SlimDevOps. So if you would like to join in these sessions with the community interactively, please do give us a follow on twitch.tv/SlimDevOps. I am delighted to see that Pete is back with me this week. Hello, how are you?
Hello. I'm good. I'm doing well. Yeah, it's been quite some time. So
It
excited to be
has.
back.
I think it's been 7 weeks since you and I did a stream together. So
Yeah.
what have you been up to?
growing a human.
How is that going?
Creating and rearing life. Yeah, my wife and I had a lovely little baby boy, Oliver.
Wonderful.
So I have been on paternity leave for 6 weeks. It's our first, so the sleep deprivation is real. Sorry to the people listening if I'm not entirely lucid, but I did manage to get I think probably 4 to 5 hours of sleep last night, so that's not bad on average. But yeah, it's good to be here. It's great. I don't know who in the community has kids or whatever, but it's it's everything I know you have a daughter, and it's everything they say it is. It's like a really magic moment. It was really cool, and really love that Slim gave me the time off. You're a Series A startup and you're not sure what the leave policy is going to be like and stuff like that, but Slim's been very, very generous, and obviously my teammates have really pulled together and done a lot. You guys have all been really busy, and
it has been a busy time. I mean, I imagine it's felt busy for you. I remember what that at least the initial weeks of sort of family life is like. My wife refers to this sort of initial 3-month period as sort of baby fog.
Yeah. Yeah, the fourth trimester is a real thing. And it's funny. I think one of the things that was funny to me was just thinking about kind of how our community is, and we're always learning new things and coding and trying new stuff out and all of that. And so I went into the paternity leave thinking oh, well, I'll have the baby, but it's 6 weeks time off. I'm gonna learn Svelte, I'm gonna practice Rust, there's a bunch of kind of CI/CD stuff that I wanted to look into. So I had this big long list of stuff that I was gonna do and learn, and I survived is all I can say.
I was gonna say, did you manage to remember to brush your teeth every day? Is probably the bar you should have set for yourself.
Yeah. A shower was a win for most of it, so that was So that was humbling, and that was I'll never refer to paternity or maternity leave as time off again.
Right.
Kudos to anybody who's ever had a baby. It's a lot. It's just a lot. So
yeah, there's a lot going on. Yeah. So I think whilst you're away, metaphorically, Slim.AI birthed a new baby as well.
Yeah.
So yeah. I think it was the week following the birth of your son. We released the Docker desktop extension at DockerCon, the Slim.AI Docker extension, and so that's a thing, and I absolutely blooming love it. Have you had much opportunity to play with it?
A little bit since I've been back. Now that it's in the marketplace, so you can get it directly from the extensions. I haven't had too much of a chance. I've installed it. I had the early version because we were obviously rushing. Yeah, my son was born a couple days before DockerCon, so we were all rushing to get DockerCon ready. And then I was okay, well, I'll be in the hospital. I hope it goes well. I was kind of checking in a little bit over Twitter to see how things were going, but Oh, hey everybody! Hey, Esme's back, and Big Pod. Good to see you all.
And
Ismail, hey, how are you doing?
Here is Small. Yeah, so welcome to the stream. First time commenter. Glad to have you with us. So yes, our Docker desktop extension I absolutely love. I've used it in a number of talks I've given at different conferences. So at the moment, what we've been doing is we've been talking about some security stuff, and we'll get into that a bit more later on. I've been giving a talk around 5 best practices for securing your production ready containers, and one of the things I've been doing is using our desktop extension in order to actually say, well, now we've got these optimized containers, are any of the vulnerabilities present inside them that our security scanning identified? And I've been able to use our desktop extension to very quickly demonstrate, no, none of the vulnerabilities that have been reported exist in these minified containers. And I think we'll be talking a little bit later about where we're headed with that to sort of factor out that little manual task. Albeit it's quite a light lift. I was surprised how quick. I mean, the desktop extension is very fast, so it's actually very quick to do that kind of analysis.
I was just gonna say, like, the local piece of it, right? That's the whole thing. Like, you have the containers on your local desktop, and we've had our SaaS for a little while, where you can kind of see inside the container, know what's inside your software, even do some of the optimization work. But being able to do that on a local container when you're in the middle of development, and all the coding that we did early on here, and struggling with cursed containers and trying to debug, like what's in the containers, and just being able to quickly go into the Docker desktop, go to that extension, and see everything inside the container. Like, oh, okay, like actually I forgot, and I left my pip library, my pip directory in this container. That's why it's 2 gigabytes when it should be 500 megabytes. That kind of thing is great. So
I really like it because it removes that loop of having to push an image somewhere in order to actually go and do some deeper analysis on it. And when I was preparing my data set, I think I had 6 different container compositions using 6 different base images. So therefore I had the fat and the slim version of each of those. So I had a dozen containers that were basically the same app, containerized in slightly different ways, and being able to just quickly flip between and do comparisons was great. So welcome back, Eric. Welcome back.
Eric.
I think there's going to be something of interest for we've got a lot of community regulars here. I think we're going to talk a little bit later about a new early access program that all of you can qualify for, that I think you will be interested in. But before we get to that, the other thing that happened, and this was wonderful, and also I lamented slightly. So I got to go to KubeCon EU in Spain. Cool. It was absolutely fab. I got to meet Aisha and Lindsay and Kyle and Ivan and even Mrityunjay, who came all the way from India. So it was fabulous to meet 5 of my colleagues for the very first time. Sadly, one of them wasn't you. So that's still on the cards for a future date, I think.
Yeah, definitely. We will definitely get together in person at some point. But Ivan as well, Ivan Velechko joined the team sort of just right before I went out, and been a big fan of his blog. Right. And his sort of like, he just writes really great blog posts and does really great visualizations of Kubernetes and containers and how they work. And, so it's been really cool I haven't had a huge chance to talk to him since I've been back, but, it was cool to see you guys in person there together after he had just joined the team, and look forward to learning a lot of stuff from him. And say hi to Eric. Eric, I owe you some data still. I know I went out on paternity leave right after I was kind of working on, made that promise to you that I would get you some of that data. So just know it's still up here, and the data's coming, and we'll get it to you. And we actually have a lot more of it now because we've been sort of improving our ability to do container scanning and saving that data over time, so that we can do things like our container report and analysis. So with DockerCon, we had a lot more people kind of signing up for the platform, and with that just meant we were scanning more containers, and so some of that data is pretty interesting. At least the public container data that we have access to is pretty interesting. So
so DockerCon was 2 things really. There was a huge, it was a tipping point for community growth. We saw a significant number of new people, and also via KubeCon as well, but also having another entry point into our tools via the Docker extension, which isn't behind any kind of gating or authentication, means that we've seen a significant uptick in the people that are using our stuff, which is absolutely fabulous.
Yeah, I'd be curious to hear from the new community members. I know I kind of posted a question in the Discord the other day, and I'm just kind of curious what people want to learn, what the new people coming in are interested about, and we did kind of our Containers 101 thing over the course of the beginning of the year, and that was really fun and interesting. And we had sort of started in on DevOps 101 and did a few things there. Now we talk a lot about security, because that's obviously on everybody's mind, and I know that was a big theme of the Open Source Summit that that just ended. So I'm just kind of curious, like, and if people want to voice off in the chat or let us know in Discord, it'd be great to know, like, in the back half of the year, what kind of content is resonating with people, what people want to see and hear about. So.
Yeah, so I've had some feedback on that. Something that I'm working on is trying to cover how to use Docker Slim in CI/CD pipelines for all of the popular platforms. And then in the future, pivoting that sort of set of how-tos and tutorials into using the Slim SaaS APIs when all of that becomes available, because it seems to be like that's where people want to go with automating slimming and optimization and what have you. But there's going to be a whole load to talk about because it's going well beyond slimming. And as you say, we've been, the two of us have been virtually attending the Open Source Summit this week. I think 5 of our colleagues have been there in person. Is that right? 5? So we've had a good showing there. And I think it was interesting that the first day keynotes really sort of set the tone. And again, software supply chain security was front and center of sort of the we need to fix this problem as an industry, how are we going to fix it? And it's interesting that there's the VP of Google Cloud talked about curated software collections. And that doesn't just mean NPM and PyPy. What it means is some version of those repositories which is security maintained and has some sort of guarantees behind it. And this is not the first time I've heard this, because I know that Canonical are working on precisely that kind of capability. So, the idea is that Canonical provide those guarantees for Ubuntu and its software archive. But of course, most of the software that you build with today doesn't come from that archive. It comes from NPM and PyPy and all of those other language ecosystems. So Canonical have been working on sort of a version of those language ecosystems that are all security vetted and scanned and maintained to extend those assurances. And it's clear Google think that this is the way forward as well. And it's not the first time I've heard that from other organizations.
Yeah, well, it just seems like everybody is picking up that mantle now. I saw Anaconda on the data science side for Python. Anaconda, pretty big package management environment, and they're releasing some new security and security vetted type package management. Obviously all the container scanning, vulnerability scanning companies, Aquasec, Trivy, and Snyk, and Gripe from Anchor. Those are all gaining a lot of popularity. As are the SBOM companies. It seems like there was a lot of talk about kind of SBOMs, and what you do with them. I think like there's a growing awareness that SBOMs are a thing and that you should do them, and that the federal government mandates it if you're going to work with them. But I think a lot of people are still in the, like, okay, SBOM, like check, I can create an SBOM. Now it's like, no, what do I do with it? And I had a pretty funny Twitter thing happen to me where I had posted before we did a stream a couple months ago, like, where do you store SBOMs? Like, what do you do with them? Like, I'm generating a ton of them using Sift and these other tools, and like, what would a developer do with them? Do you just track them? Do you save them? Do you, put them in the container? Do you put them in a management system? And I didn't get a great answer. Now, I'm not the most popular person on Twitter, so I wasn't surprised by that. But then somebody just found me 2 days ago saying they had Googled that same question, and my tweet came up in their Google. And I was like, so there really aren't, like, it's really kind of the Wild West with SBOMs right now, and they're a great tool, but they're really just a starting point for kind of, they need to have some action behind them in order for them to be viable. So.
Well, you're talking about SBOMs. I think it wasn't all that long ago, but at some point whilst you were out, I had John, our CEO, on here to talk about the 3 S's of software supply chain security. And that you can find on our YouTube channel. That video's up there now. So if you go to youtube.com/SlimDevOps, you can find that video and you can see the 3 S's. But things move fast around here because it's no longer the 3 S's of software
I
supply
heard there's
chain
a fourth
security.
S. Yes.
It is now it's the 4 S's of software supply
Right.
chain security.
Right. Yeah. So while I was out, fourth S came to our 3 S's framework, and so, but yeah, like backing up, like on the 3 S's is interesting because I've actually been seeing more people kind of talk about it, just kind of in random tweets or posts or even tutorials and stuff like that. Now, obviously Project 6 Store is a pretty popular thing for signing. So the 3 S's are SBOM, Sign, and Slim.
Yeah.
And what I've been seeing is a lot of people just unprompted, not necessarily even people in our community or whatever, are saying like, okay, yeah, that is what I'm doing. I am, I have a container, create an SBOM, sign it, I use Docker Slim to slim it, and then I sign the Slim container and I send that into my infrastructure, and that's sort of like the working model that's sort of evolving. And, as we know, there are other ways to Slim containers, there's a bunch of different ways. We prefer Docker Slim, but there's a lot of different ways to do that. But that sort of general framework seems like it's kind of emerging as a way for people to say, okay, with the SBOM, I know everything that's in my container, right? With the signing, I know who put it there. I know that it's the container that I created and not something else. And I have that provenance.
Yeah.
And then with slimming, I know that I'm shipping only what I need to production. And then with those tools, I have like a pretty good sense that okay, I'm taking a good security posture here. The fourth S is sharing, and that was something that sort of occurred to John, I think, as our CEO, and he said,
Yeah.
Well, you can't just do these things in a vacuum. SBOM, slimming, signing is all something that an individual developer does, right? But security is only good if you kind of share it across teams, and and you're sort of public about, okay, here's a vulnerability, or here's this is what's inside of our container if we're going to share that with you, and that's important if we think about things like Log4j, right? Log4j. Some people remediated Log4j themselves. They have a different forked version of Log4j that doesn't have that exploit that was in it. Right now, how would you know that if you were just doing the SBOM, just doing the signing and the slimming, right? You wouldn't necessarily know that. So what's that communication piece? And that was sort of the impetus behind this blog post that we're looking at here. And then sort of this new early access set of features that we're launching that's designed for teams and organizations to be able to kind of manage their containers, manage the supply chain security artifacts that they're creating, ensure that there are certain policies that are being followed by their teams, and then to have a record of that over time, and that was sort of the announcement that we made at Open Source Summit. So
yeah,
pretty exciting stuff. Yeah.
So here's an article from Stephen Vaughan Nichols about our early access program to our new software supply chain security service. So if you are watching this as a member of the community, be it on Twitch here right now or on YouTube, above my head is our website. And on there you'll find how to connect with us either on Twitter or our Discord server. If you contact us, we've got some limited spots open for design partnerships, and you can get access to this early on. And we'll talk a little bit about what it is. But I just wanted to loop back to that sharing piece, because we can talk about sharing in a number of different ways. I'll just move us back to this view here. I've seen this work very successfully in a past role I had when I worked in aviation. I used to work for an organization that did analysis of black box flight recorders, not after there was an accident, but after every flight, in order as part of a sort of a safety program. And that was terrific, because now the flight safety officers have an effective way to look at their fleet and the issues that are affecting the way the aircraft are being operated by the people, or the maintenance issues that are being flagged, and they can build plans around that. But the problem is it gives you sort of a profile statement about like how safe your operations are, but in isolation it doesn't mean very much. So what we developed was a mechanism by which you could de-identify the data, and for those operators in the same region operating the same aircraft, you could plot lines to say you are here and the rest of the industry is here, or the average is this, so you know whether you're good, bad, or indifferent. And it gives you a way to measure your position, in the industry. And what was fascinating about that is that geographically, the safety standards are slightly different. So we found all of our customers in America were suddenly very alarmed at what looked like an appalling safety record, because they were being measured against, operators in other parts of the world where the standards were different. But I'm thinking that could be interesting, like, if you've got a number of vulnerabilities and what have you in your containers, how do you know whether that's good? How do you know whether you're managing that effectively? What if you could plot the same technology components against other anonymized organizations to see what their vulnerability position looks like, things of that nature. So I think there's a lot of scope for the data sharing side of that to be really effective.
Yeah, and I think that's something that we've been thinking about a lot, which is, why it kind of needs like a platform approach and sort of like the ability to like look at multiple things and share them, right? Because you don't necessarily always get the same reports out of any given vulnerability scanner, as we've seen on this stream. You might scan it with Sneak and you get this, and you scan it with Trivia and you get this, and they're all directionally the same. They all have similar things, but just that variability just causes a lot of churn and a lot of thrash within organizations, especially when you're consuming a container from say a third party. Say you're working with a company and you're going to use their container, or you're grabbing like an open source container that's just kind of off the shelf. Just leads to a lot of back and forth. And then I think the other thing is that like zero vulnerabilities is a great ideal, but it's not always that realistic, and it might even be kind of over optimizing, or it might be an indication that you have a false positive, right? It might be the case that you either took things out that the security scanner needs, or it might be that you actually if you have an empty container, then you don't have any vulnerabilities. Great, good job. But so zero might not be realistic, and it might not even be the ideal. The knowledge piece of it's the most important piece. So
what I discovered recently is I was saying I built the same app in using different container composition techniques and different base images, and then did a full security audit with all of the security scanners and the SBOM analysis tools. And it actually debunked some sort of assumptions that we make about some of the techniques and base images. For example, distroless, which people use because it creates small containers. There's some complexity there because you have to use a multi-part container construction technique, and in fact I had to use our tools to actually work out what the heck is distroless based on, because I had to build my app in the build stage using a compatible Python as the distroless runtime piece. So I had to go and find out. So I used our Docker extension for that and figured out it was a Debian 11 based thing, which is stripped of all the stuff it doesn't need. But I needed to know some very specific things to actually make a compatible container. So there was some friction there, but I did make this container, and it was significantly smaller than, say, the official Python image from the Python project. But it had it was the worst security report of all of them, even though it was among the smallest containers. And that's because, well, first of all, there's no apt, so there's no mechanism to install software updates, and so you're relying on the base image alone, and that base image is Debian 11, and that doesn't get the same kind of security treatment that, say, an Ubuntu image or a RHEL image or a SUSE image gets, where they have a commitment to, the security profile of those base images. So I was quite surprised by that. So, doing the scanning is essential, even if it's like, well, what do I do with the artifacts? Even if you don't do anything with the artifacts, you'll educate yourself as to what your true exposure is. And the assumption that smaller is always more secure, it completely blew that out of the water. That is not the case.
Right. Depends. It still matters what's in the container.
Right. Yeah.
Size alone is not the only thing.
Yeah.
It's a general rule, but
So
yeah.
we've got this new early access program. We've talked about the 4 S's. What are we building into the Slim SaaS platform in support of helping people tackle the software supply chain security problem?
Yeah, so I think we'll probably want to do a full demo of the full thing. Since I'm only a week back from paternity leave, I can't speak too authoritatively of everything that's in. I've seen the demo, but only at a very high level myself right now. So, I think what we've designed it to do is to go alongside sort of SBOM creation and vulnerability scanning, and so you'll see a lot of vulnerability scanning capabilities within the platform itself.
Yeah.
And then, we've talked to the PaymentWorks team here before. So, with that comes some of the functionality that they've been using pretty heavily, and some of our other design partners have been using heavily, which are the API access, like you mentioned. So we have a command line tool and the ability to run APIs, so you can actually build things into your CI/CD pipelines. We have the connectors, which kind of allow you to kind of ship things back and forth, and then this artifact management that allows you to kind of create a Docker Compose file just out of a set of containers that you've managed on our platform. So you have these containers of record, and you can create a compose file, and then you can kind of do even feed that back into, say, your version control, so that you can see diffs of that compose file over time, and kind of what's changing and how your app is changing over time. There's a bunch of other stuff. I think we'll get Josh in here to see a demo, but again, the idea is, we want to communicate or facilitate communication between teams, and kind of the management of all of these things, and the management of your own containers. So if there are teams out there and organizations who want to see a demo, if you think this might be a good fit for your team, just reach out to us on Discord. Ping us, either myself, PSV in our Discord, or Martin, who is at Wimpy in our Discord, and let us know, and we can get you set up. And then the other side is the optimization piece, which is available to anybody, teams or not. So if there are people in the community who want to see kind of the optimization and work on slimming your containers through our SaaS platform, that's now fully built out. But we're still opting people in to use sort of the full suite of tools. If you go into the SaaS platform now, you can do kind of a basic demo of it. But if people are interested in seeing that, we can just flip a switch and opt you into that. We're just trying to still get feedback, make sure that there aren't any crucial bugs and that kind of stuff. But that's also part of this early access. So if people want to see the optimization, ping us, let us know. We'll be kind of putting a call to action in the Discord as well.
Yeah.
But that thing has come a long way, I'll be honest. It's got some pretty cool features and capabilities that are actually not available in Docker Slim. So Docker Slim's command line tool, and you use that to slim. This is all like a web interface for slimming your containers. So when you're thinking about things like configurations of environment variables, or if you want to, we've talked a lot about the include list. So if you want to say, hey, don't take curl out of my container. I know I'm not using it in production, but I actually need it, and I don't want you to remove it. You can actually check a box and say, keep curl in my container. It's that's pretty cool, and so you don't have to do these long lists or these, really big CLI command line type, incantations, as our developers call them, in order to get your containers fully configured for the optimization process. So that's all been pretty cool. And I'm just curious to get people's feedback on it and have everybody see that. So
it's got some good entry points as well, because instead of starting you with slim a container, it gives you some starting recipes, which is, my container is a service, it's a graphical web app, it's just a microservice, it's a command line tool in a container that doesn't expose any network services, so it gives you a starting position to help you find the happy path with what you're trying to do. And in the new early access program, we're adding some more features to the optimization process, which is a sort of a slider. It's not a slider, but you can choose sort of how much minification you want to do. So if you're new to this, you can go for basic minification, which will make your container smaller. It will remove some vulnerabilities, but it's not a super aggressive minification process. And there are different levels, so you can use that. You can use the existing tools to do the comparison, what actually changed, and then what we're building into the platform now, which I'm really loving seeing get created, is the security scanning tools and SBOM analysis tools. Now, we talked about some of the challenges of the security scanning tools, which is if you run Trivy, Gripe, and Sneak, you'll get slightly different results from all three of them. And what our tool does is uses all of those, and it can aggregate the responses and actually give you a single version of the truth. It's terrific. I used to be a vulnerability analyst years ago, and I have a hand in saying these are the features that I would have loved, all those years ago to help ease that process of producing vulnerability reports and understanding, what the exposure was across my sort of, farm of well, back then it was servers and VMs. Almost no containers at that point. So that tool is getting really good for the security scanning, and then the SBOM analysis as well, and then a sort of levels of risk that you want to apply to the minification process, and then measure the impact of making those changes in terms of the security profile of the devices. So if you want in, do let us know, because it's really cool stuff. I see we've got a question here from Eric. Let me just bring that up.
Sure.
So Eric says, will there be any special arrangements for teams in the community building open source tools and projects to use the SaaS platform?
So I can't commit to it. I'm very happy you asked this question. I'm happy to get it. We haven't talked anything about, just to be clear, like right now, all of the early access, there's no charge, there's no, we're not monetizing this at this point, so we're not charging anybody. We will eventually, obviously charge teams and stuff like that. I can imagine as a company that really, really cares about open source that, that like other companies, I think Yannick had flagged me on Twitter saying that, Copilot is free for any open source maintainers. GitHub Copilot is free for any open source maintainers or contributors. I can't commit to that because I haven't had a chance to catch up with people on that, but I think that it's very likely that we would take a similar position where open source communities can use any of these teams and kind of organizational use cases on their own. So it would work great for that. So if you're maintaining a open source container and you want to bring in a couple other people that are working on that container with you, then yes, that's totally appropriate and great. And obviously we support that, and we'll show all the love to the open source community to come in and use those. So Eric, if you have ideas, or if there's people who might want to do that, then all on board with that. And I think it's a really great use case. And we've had a few open source maintainers have been giving us feedback on the platform. We use Docker Slim a lot. There are a lot of people who kind of have a container that has sort of a large original image, and then they sort of provide a little bit of a recipe with Docker Slim to slim that container after you've used it. And then there are some people who just actually run their container through Docker Slim. Specifically, Martin, you were mentioning the levels of optimization, and in the basic level of an optimization. So if let's say you're really conservative, you're like, I really don't want this container to ever break. I'm okay with living with, maybe not the 90% reduction, but maybe just a 30% reduction in the container size. Well, what a lot of people don't know, and we've seen this over and over again in open source communities, is that Docker has a tendency to create a lot of kind of ghost files or duplicate files. So you'll see that in our SaaS platform a lot, that it's like it identifies, say, okay, these are files that were actually created multiple times during the container construction process. So the easy thing to do, they don't serve any purpose. There's no reason for them to be there. The easy thing to do is just say, delete those duplicated files, keep the ones that you need. And that's kind of the safest optimization that you can do. Now, that doesn't get into the whole Docker Slim's going to run your application, and say that you, like me, I installed pandas and everything because that's just in my environment variable, and that's a huge library, and that goes into my web development containers and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't do all that stuff, but it would, get you some savings on your container out of the gate. And that's something we've seen in open source projects where we've, kind of halved the size of popular open source containers just by doing that.
Right.
So yeah, so that's great. And yeah, Eric, would love to hear more about people who might do that. I think that's a great way for us to build and grow. And I will highlight one thing, which is Martin also mentioned the kind of the optimization wizard as well. And that actually came directly out of our work with you, Eric, which was really great. I think we've been working with a bunch of R Shiny type of containers, and some of them are kind of CLI, where you're just going to run R within a container and run some data analysis there. And then there's things like Shiny, where you have sort of an open web port, and you're going to go in and do this. And that was sort of like the initial thought was like, okay, there's different types of apps, and optimization looks a little bit different depending on the entry point is, what the nature of that application is, what its intended use is. And so the new optimization kind of workflows are meant to help people kind of navigate through that. Whereas with Docker Slim, it's sort of like, you're kind of in the deep end of the pool, and you have to kind of figure it out on your own. So
yeah, I would add to the piece about extending use to open source projects. There's a topic which always is coming up at the big conferences, and it's about sustainability of software, and particularly open source software. And it's more than just being able to monetize the thing. In some cases, if you can attract enough large enterprise customers with the value proposition, and they're your paying customers, they can help subsidize supporting independent developers with their emerging projects and solutions by being able to give some functionality to those users. But this whole idea of sustainable open source is really beginning to buckle a little bit, because I think it's looking a bit like a lie. There are not enough people working on a lot of the software that the internet is dependent upon. And I think finding a way to sort of pay down that debt, we all build on the same stuff. And in some cases, some people are not paying their dues. And, I think Log4j highlighted that, where the Log4j maintainer got some sort of emails from legal departments saying that they wanted a response in 24 hours outlining what the 7-step remediation plan was going to be. And it was like, this is from an organization that has never made any contribution monetarily or otherwise to the project. So it's like, read the license, it says as is, unless you're paying for something, you're kind of on your own.
We joined the open source initiative. That was an announcement that happened while I was out. I wrote a blog post about why that's important to us. And I mean, I think for us it's a small thing, but we wanted to kind of be at a reasonable level. It's important to us what open source licenses are, and to kind of give back to the community. I mean, it's just like it's just so hard to give back to the community, and it's such a big community. It's such a big thing, right? It's like the biggest thing of our lifetimes is like open source, right? And it's like how the software world works, and software is how the world works. So you feel like you make these donations to these organizations, and that's a good step. But it's like it's like, man, like what else can you do? It's like fighting the good fight, but it's hard to know what to do. So people have ideas for how you support open source. I'm all ears, but it's nice to be able to at least give some money back to that organization, which I really like the work they do. It's focused on kind of making sure that open source licenses are actually like legally viable, and that they don't get kind of I don't know what the word is, like they don't get kind of exploited by either organizations or through clever legal hijinks, and a validation step, because like we care, if you're going to have 700 packages in your container, you're going to want to know what licenses go against those containers, and you're going to want to know that those licenses mean something. Um, I'll also say when you look at like the SBOMs, we've been looking at a lot of this container data, and it's not very clean the way open source licenses are listed in those
No.
SBOM reports and those containers. You'd have GPT-3 or GPL3, and you have the MIT licenses, and it might be MIT space license, MIT space license 3.0 or whatever. It's like, it's really, even with the SBOM, it's pretty hard. It's not like you just get a report that says, here are all the packages that I have that are MIT licensed.
Yeah.
You still have a lot of data munging to do on that front in order to make sense of those.
As someone that maintains open source software and also the packages for those bits of software in the distributions, I can tell you it is, although there are fixed naming conventions for each of the licenses, they're not well upheld. So you get all sorts of random variations of the same thing, so it's very difficult to pick apart. That would definitely need some work. And also, talking about open source, when we were talking about these new capabilities in the platform for vulnerability scanning and SBOM analysis and all the rest of it, it was an important discussion about licenses to ensure that all of the tools and technologies that we wanted to take advantage of were all under compatible licenses that we can use in our platform, but more importantly, that we can contribute back, because we're now going to be using this stuff. There are doubtlessly going to be improvements and changes that we're going to require in order to do that. So, this was all part of the assessment that took place internally.
Yeah.
And
I'll say, we've used a lot of Vuetify, and we've done it in the stream here, and I'll say I connected with the Vuetify community, and it was just really cool. Like, talk about like really, really cool people. I just reached out kind of over the transom to the person who leads the product, John. He's kind of like the main person there, but then he has a team, and we joined a call, and it was just kind of a meet and greet call. I just, we had donated some money to them, so I wanted to, just kind of talk and find out more about Vuetify and what they were working on. And they had two of their core developers plus John join the call. They joined from Sydney, San Francisco, and Texas, I believe. So we were in all these different time zones, and the person who joined from Sydney had stayed up all night, like just because the call was going to be, like 3 a.m. their time or something, or 5 a.m. their time or something. So they're like, oh yeah, I just stayed up all night and coded just so I could, hop on this call with you. And I was like, man, what a bunch of dedicated people, and for an open source project. And it was really cool. They were really great, and I just highly recommend Vuetify if you're using a Vue stack and you want something that's kind of Basecamp-ish.
Even if you're new to writing, UIs in JavaScript frameworks, or maybe you're sick of the one you're using, go and look at Vuetify. It's really good.
Yeah. Big Pot, I'm curious, you made a comment in chat. What do you mean by open source licenses are in many ways a dirty hack anyway? I'm very curious about that comment. I'm pretty sure I agree with it, but I want to hear more about what you mean by that. So,
I mean, what I would like to see from some license analysis inside my containers. I think I can mention the names of these organizations, but when I worked at Canonical, I worked with Microsoft and Amazon. They were using containerization technologies, not Docker and OCI containers, a different containerization technique. And you have the same problem, in air quotes, which is a collection of software goes inside a container, but they needed to know, are all the licenses of this software compatible, not just with each other, but with our company policies in terms of which licenses we want to use, because there were certain licenses that they couldn't use software under certain licenses. So we developed a mechanism for them to assess that, and what it ended up is rewrites of parts of their applications, because this flagged up something they didn't realize, which they were using incompatible licenses or using software that was under a license that they could not redistribute. So they had to rewrite or find alternative sort of libraries and modules that did similar things in order to work around the issue. And I think that would be fascinating to actually see, here's my container. Is all of this stuff compliant?
Yeah. Well, and it begs the question to me. I mean, I don't know. I just want to, I'm not an open source expert. I don't know that much about it. I haven't spent time studying the licenses and the legality behind it, but it does make me wonder, like if there are just better ways of doing things, like is it important that the license files always remain within the containers? I know for some of the licenses, it's important that, or like it's stipulated in the license that you need to ship the license with the software. So if you're offering it to the public, then like, yes, it does, or at least it needs to be publicly available for people to consume the license, right? Does that mean it needs to go in the container itself? It's, I don't know, it's a challenge question. I'm not smart enough to know the answer.
The outcome of the past work I've done is yes, it needed to be inside the container as well.
Yeah.
So when the minification stuff ran, well, it wasn't minification like we know it, but when the containers were, let's say, optimized, one of the things that had to be retained was the copyright and license file for every bit of software that was inside that container. Cool.
Eric just intrigued me with something. We can even integrate Vuetify and Shiny. I want to hear about that. That's you do that stream. I'll bookmark that one, Eric. I'll come to that. That sounds awesome.
There's a challenge. There's gauntlet thrown there, Eric.
Yeah. Yeah. Is that through Vue? You can run Vue with Shiny, or you can just use the Vuetify kind of framework in there. I don't know. I have so many questions about that. That sounds awesome. So.
Yeah. Also, Pete, you were talking earlier, and there was a throwaway comment in there about Yannick mentioning to you about the Copilot, GitHub Copilot being extended to open source developers. Yep. I've been using Copilot for the last 2 days, and oh my gosh, it's amazing. It is.
I know.
It's spooky, but it's really good. It's helped me out. I was refactoring some code last night, or I was looking at something, and I'd committed the cardinal sin. I was repeating myself, and I was like, I'm going to deal with that. I'm going to sort that out. And I went to where I started, and I started creating a loop, because that was how I was going to get away from all of this copy paste. And it immediately suggested a complete refactor of that, like 6 lines of code. Yeah. And I just pressed tab, and it did it. And it kept my variable names in all the appropriate places. And I was like, okay, that's pretty good.
It's awesome. Anybody who knows me knows that I'm just like a total AI ML fanboy. I did a lot of machine learning work at TripAdvisor with natural language processing, and I don't know, it's interesting, you just like, it moves so fast, and Copilot is so cool, and I just think it's a really, like, what OpenAI is doing is really, really interesting, and some really, really cool work there. And the DALL-E thing also like came up over the past couple of weeks with that becoming available, and with our photo app and all that, can we build DALL-E into it to create sort of images for us, and there's a lot of cool stuff there. So
DALL-E 2 is amazing, and I have a friend who operates the supercomputer at London University, and he used their capabilities to use those AI ML painting algorithms to create me artwork for the Ubuntu Mate project earlier in the year. And Esme says, what? I might need to try Copilot now. So Esme, I do recommend you give it a try. Earlier today, I did a stream on my own channel, and I was writing a driver for a Raspberry Pi, and Copilot helped with that, because it was simple things like how to close the serial connection to the serial controller I was connecting to. I just went to do a close, but it suggested actually you need to check if it's still open and then close it, and it just provided me, and I was like, this is great. It's like having a pair programming without another person there. I'm really happy I gave it a try.
Yeah, it's funny to me. I might be in Big Pod's camp on this, because he says he's not a fan of it because he's not a fan of AI, which is not true for me. I am a big fan of AI, but for me, I don't code for work. I do it for sort of personal mastery, and kind of engagement. I do it for work sometimes, but I'm not an engineer, and so kind of speed and crispness of code and sort of that isn't what I do. I do to learn and grow and try and build new things. So for me, some of the enjoyment of coding is actually like how do I center a diff? I don't remember how to do that. I never remember how to do that. What's the regex for an email? Like I want to know that.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
I definitely get it. Yeah. So.
Yes, it's particularly good at recommending regular expressions. I noticed that earlier as well. Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah. Eric, okay, cool. Eric, so you already did that on the R podcast, so I'll check that out. I'll go back to your stream. I'll watch that. I wanna see that. That sounds really cool. So, yeah. No, that's really cool stuff. I think it'll be interesting to see what AI does for sort of creative pursuits, and I consider software development a creative pursuit, you know. But I was reading a pretty good article about kind of DALL-E 2 that was, sort of projecting like what does this mean for creatives, right? And so this guy tried to like create a logo using DALL-E 2, right? And the logo was kind of crappy, it wasn't really it wasn't a logo that you would use, but his point was if you're a creative agency and your job is to make logos, why wouldn't you use this as a starting off point to say, okay, here's like 9 ideas. Now maybe that starts me thinking about like what this logo could look like, and I'll go and use it like that. So sort of like assistive applied AI is kind of where we are. And when I think about our industry, right, or like our scope of the world and supply chain security and container optimization, like I just see this like huge opportunity here to say like, okay, well, at the end of the day, if we know like what needs to be in applications, and we know on the other side what developers need to actually like write those applications, it shouldn't be a huge lift to be able, well, maybe not a huge lift, but it shouldn't be out of the realm of possibilities that we could, use applied machine learning and AI to sort of determine what infrastructure or what parts of the application and all of that we need to do, while there's still this sort of art of, okay, the developer at the end of the day is the one who knows that like, I chose this library for a reason, or, I know that I'm going to need this optimization for later because here's where we're going with this application. So I don't want to just like take it out completely. So that blend I think is really fascinating and will have a big impact on what we're doing. So I wasn't sure about the long-term impact of AI when everything was to do with, deep fakes and, facial recognition. But in particularly the last 9 months, I've seen so many interesting, useful projects that are well beyond just analyzing faces, that are doing things that are for social good. And without AI, it would have taken years longer, and it's accelerated scientific research inordinately. And I'm just like fascinated. And now I've found some AI that really helps me on a daily basis. It's fantastic. So, yeah. I welcome our AI overlords. Me too. If they're listening, it is funny. Kind of going back to having I gave birth to my wife. Sorry, my wife gave birth to our first son. And it's just interesting. Like we didn't do the social media thing and the announcements. We haven't put his photo kind of out into space yet. And part of it's just a little paranoia over, okay, like these things get crawled, they get sucked up into data sets, into AI, and do I really want his face changes every day, so I don't know that I'm worried about it, but it's a funny thing to have to think about in today's day and age. But I also lolled at Esme's it does regex, will it do my laundry too?
So
soon, I'm sure soon enough.
My daughter's 12 and her image has never been on the internet, so we followed similar principles to yourself.
Yeah.
Right, welcome Takov. Hello, good to see you. How are you doing?
Yeah. Eric mentions responsible AI. That was a big thing of the you remember we were at the Insight partner Scale AI conference, and responsible AI was the huge topic there. And so while we are Slim.AI and we do kind of application intelligence, and that's our thing, I find it really fascinating. I think this is like the topic for our times, or at least it's definitely. There are a lot of them these days, but this is the one that I'm the most interested in right now. So it really is fascinating.
Well, there we go. That took us in an interesting unscripted direction, talking about assisted AI. Fabulous. Right, so I think we'll put a bow on it there. I think we've hit the high points, and an interesting ad hoc discussion on AI as well for a bonus bit there. So
that's an AI win. Yes.
If you want to join the early access for the software supply chain, so this is the security scanning and SBOM analysis stuff to sit alongside container optimization and help you manage that problem, then head up to Slim.AI, contact us through our Discord, or get in touch through Twitter or email us. There's email addresses and all that stuff, and we can hook you up. There are limited spots available though, so if you're interested and if you need clearance from maybe the rest of your team, then have a chat and then get in touch with us.
Yeah.
Right then. I've looked to see if any of our friends are streaming, and sadly they are not. So I think we will just put a bow on it and wrap things up. Okay. But we'll be back next week.
Says FizzBuzz when? I will say 2024 now.
Yeah. God, FizzBuzz.
So, yeah. Maybe we'll do we should do some FizzBuzz stuff. That'll be fun. We'll do a stream with FizzBuzz at some point.
Oh gosh, really? I can't imagine how many times I've written FizzBuzz in different languages for interviews in the past.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, what if we do container networking FizzBuzz? We have one that's Fizz.
Oh no.
No. All right.
No.
All right.
That does have the sound of one of these ridiculous challenges to it, though.
Yeah, so we'll need AI to make that work for sure. But Charpa says yes, love it. All right, the dumbest idiot says thanks for streaming. We'll be back next week. Awesome, nice.
We'll see you soon.
Yeah, excited to be back. Thanks everybody. Say hi in our Discord to me. Welcome back. And if you haven't introduced yourself, introduce yourself. Great to connect with everybody. And yeah, looking forward to being back on stream. So
yeah, it's good to have you back. Thanks for joining me today. And if anyone's got any crazy ideas about FizzBuzz and container networking conundrums, let us know in Discord if you've got a challenge for us. We do like Mission Impossible here as well, so we can do that as a live coding experiment. Right, exactly. Thanks everyone. We're going to wrap it up there. All right. We'll see you next week. Everybody. Bye bye for now.
See ya. All right.